friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger along. Norfolk, 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 Norfolk. You won't be a stranger along. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger along. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all.
We've just reconvened from closed session. It's been moved by Councillor Wells, seconded by Councillor Geisens, that the committee adjourns this closed meeting at 3:59 p.m. and reconvenes in open session. Those in favor? Again, those in favor? There, we got enough. We have reconvened in open session. Thank you. Okay, that concludes our closed session. I have nothing to report publicly from that. We will now recess council and go to our Board of Health. So we'll give you a few moments to stretch and then we'll start our Board of Health. You only want to do 2 minutes to stretch and for a minute or not? Or you want to plow right into it? Yeah, well, we'll be breaking at the end of this, so I'm going to move ahead. Thank you. Okay, I make the time 4 o'clock. It's time for September 26th Board of Health meeting this afternoon. So I'd like to welcome everybody here, and I would first ask board members if there is any disclosure of pecuniary interest to declare. Seeing none, the first page is printed, pages 1 through 4, printed the minutes from our last Board of Health meeting of August the 22nd, 2017. Any comments? Councillor Oliver, on those minutes, please. No, we don't have to stand for Board of Health. No, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chair, rather, my only comment on the minutes, and I see right on the very back page, anecdotally under other business, the author of the minutes referenced the fact that I had asked to have some reference to the need for monitoring of ticks in Turkey Point area. I had raised that point in the context of Dr. Locke's monthly report to us, and I think that's where I felt it would have had some impact had there been a bit of a reference as in the context of his report, rather than just anecdotally at the end. Now, I'm not asking for a change, but again, I'm stating my case, Mr. Chair, that I think it's important through our medical officer of health that we communicate to the province the need for this, and that was what I was asking for. So thank you for letting me say that.
Thank you for that. Any other comments? Hearing none, I'll declare those minutes adopted as printed. We have 3 staff reports this afternoon. First, Dr. Locke, the acting medical officer of health update from you, please. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon, gentlemen, and through the chair. We've had no significant sort of outbreaks in the community at the present time, I'm pleased to report. And you may have seen in the media some comments that were made about the incidence of rodents increasing. I followed up by checking with our inspectors, our food premise inspectors, to see whether or not this in fact had been a situation that had been reported to them, and there's nothing that I could find on a food premise note that would indicate that we've got any issue with rats or rodents other than normal. There may anecdotally be an increase, but I have no evidence for that, and I thought it was important just to tell the Board of Health that there's no evidence that I'm aware of that is occurring. As you know from the media, the hydrogen sulfide well gas emissions, we've spent a lot of time looking at those, and I believe you're going to get a more full report a little bit later. So I'd just like to report that the emergent situation that we've been in is now closed, and the residents are back in their homes. And as I say, a more complete report will be delivered later. There are some concerns just around the world and in general about, I've spoken before about the issue with vaccine and the uptake of vaccine and vaccine preventable diseases. And just to give you a flavour of what's happening around the world, in Alberta, we've had over 200 cases of whooping cough per month being reported currently. And we've had more than 500 cases reported since January. So, and this outbreak is yet to peak, so we haven't seen the highest numbers yet. Similarly, in Greece, they've had an outbreak of measles, and there's more than 70 confirmed and suspected cases of measles per month being reported in Greece. And then around the world, with regards to the vector-borne diseases, insects that predominantly that bring disease to us. We've had quite large outbreaks of dengue in Pakistan, 450 cases of dengue per week being reported. Vietnam, more than 14,000 suspected cases of dengue fever being reported there. We're keeping an eye on what's happening in the United States with regards to the post-Hurricane Harvey health concerns. There are some concerns, of course, of aid workers going in there and being exposed to contaminated water. And the type of things that we're seeing down there are diseases, one called leptospirosis, which is a spirochete, a spirochetal infection, bacterial infection. A spirochete is one, for instance, that causes syphilis, and it's spread by rodents and rats in infected water. So we're concerned, and also the gastrointestinal outbreaks that usually follow these natural disasters. I thought it very interesting that the number of cases and proportion of people coming back from vacation, especially those travelers who are friends and relatives going to malarial countries, the proportion of these cases has increased 53% in the last few years. So we're seeing significant numbers of people coming back infected with malaria from these countries, and we need to get that message out for people that are traveling to get some prophylactic medication before they travel. And in Australia, we've had 1,900 cases of acute viral enteritis, mainly by rotavirus, and I'm hoping that that's not going to herald what we're going to see in our flu season here this year. Certainly, it's a significant number, more than they've seen for a long time, mainly situated in New South Wales and Sydney. And that, Mr. Chair, is what's going on, and the end of my report.
Thank you very much, Doctor, and I'll open it to any questions. Councillor Brunton, please.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. Yeah, just through you to Dr. Locke, and I apologize for my back to you, Doctor, but I never asked this question at the advisory committee, but what are they anticipating for the flu season coming up? Like, I know they give the shots, but it's hit and miss, I understand, with what they... my understanding was last year's flu shots weren't the right mixture, I guess, or serum to combat the type of flu we had. Is that, what are the odds of that, or how is that determined?
Through you, Mr. Chair. To the councillor, generally what happens is that we look at influenza travels from east to west, and we generally look at what's happening in Australia to give us an idea about what the circulating strains will be. And then earlier in the season, as you say, it's a flick of a coin really to see whether or not what strains are circulating in Australia. Usually in the flu vaccine it's predominantly A. We rarely see B, but the usual composition of the vaccine, and that's just coming out about now, is usually two types of A, usually an H1N1 variety, and then one of the other strains of A plus a B variety. And as I say, it's like playing roulette, really. We look at the odds and we look at the information that we're getting, and we're hoping that there's no transposition of DNA within these strains that are circulating in Australia. We produce the vaccine, and hopefully that we've made the right choice with regards to the strain that actually comes here through Canada. Problem is, a lot of the time they're fairly right, but some of the time they're not. So sometimes the vaccine is not a good match for the actual strain that evolves and comes through Canada. But that's the process that we usually do, and till something better comes up, I think we're stuck with that. But your point is well made. We can't guarantee. We just look at the odds and place our money where the odds tell us to place it.
So are those vaccines like on the shelf someplace for different strains of flu? Is that how it works? Like, so does somebody say, okay, it looks like we're going to need this particular one, and out it goes? Like, once it's out, they don't change usually.
Yes, WHO is usually involved in that process with deciding which strains that they're going to develop. But the commercial manufacturers are the people that manufacture it, of course. And depending on By the time it comes to Australia, it's already hit Europe usually, and sometimes we even see a mismatch between what the predominant strain is in Europe, what actually ends up coming through Canada. So it's a difficult job to look at these things, but they actually develop them according to the strains that are developing. So they have a fairly short period of time between the Australian peak and the next 6 months when it begins to appear here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Columbus?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Dr. Locke, haven't heard much locally about the West Nile virus issue, but I heard on the radio the other day that there were 3 people passed away in the Windsor area. Where are we with the West Nile virus? Are we still got a program monitoring and that type of thing?
We do. We monitor the mosquitoes in catchment areas around the municipality and in the country. We have had, I believe, one mosquito that was positive. We've had no human cases as far as I'm aware. Having said that, there was a case which was travel related, I believe, reported in Hamilton a month or so ago. But we've had no real human activity here.
That be because of the dry summer we had?
There are various reasons for that. The breeding cycle and the number of mosquitoes that actually, not all mosquitoes carry West Nile virus, and only certain species of mosquito carry it. And in fact, the number of species that carry mosquitoes is lower this year. That actual group, there's 2 main species of mosquito that carry West Nile virus, and the numbers are lower this year than they were last year. So depending on the number of vectors are around, this is one of the things that they have to bite, either horse reservoir or human reservoir, and then pass it on by biting another human or horse or whatever. So you have to have that chain of events happening, as well as significant numbers of the vectors in order to infect people.
Any further questions? Mr. Block?
Thank you, Mayor, or Chair, Luke. Mr. Locke, Dr. Locke, thank you very much. And you were talking about you don't always get the vaccine right, and I just wonder what percentage would that be? So like it would be 20% risk or 10% risk?
That's a difficult question to answer, mainly because there's some crossover effect with these vaccines. So we may not get the strain exactly on, but you will still get some. You'll still get some immunity from the vaccine across species of influenza. So it's difficult to say percentage-wise, but in general. Last year we had a fairly good match. The year before we had a terrible match. It wasn't good at all.
I guess the reason I ask is because some people will say that they don't want to take that vaccine, because they don't really believe what maybe the authorities say, and that there is some risk to it. So that's the reason I'm asking the question. I guess for those people that would say, I don't want to take that vaccine. I mean, how would you respond to that?
In the at-risk groups, the younger children over 6 months and infants and the elderly, it's not necessarily the flu that kills you, it's the complications that you get from it. And in those groups, complications are very high, and if you get them, they can be significantly impair your health in general. And a significant number of deaths are associated with influenza from pneumonia that's contracted after your immune system has been lowered. So in those groups, again, we know there are people that don't believe in the vaccine, etc., but it's the best we have because the alternative would be to treat it after you have it, which would be giving you some of the antiviral medications, and they're probably not as good as the vaccine.
Okay, thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you. Any further questions? Moved by Member Wells, seconded by Member Oliver, that the update from the Acting Medical Officer of Health be received as information. Discussion? Those in favor? It's carried. Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Locke. Our next staff report is Healthy Babies, Healthy Children Program Update, page 7 of our agenda. You will find the report 17-25. Marlene and Susan, I'll turn it over to you, please.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. I'm going to ask Ms. Taylor to introduce staff who will be presenting the report through presentation.
Thank you. I'm actually going to turn it to Ms. Heffer, who's going to do the introductions.
Thank you. So thank you for the opportunity to discuss the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children program with you today. My name is Kathy Heffer, and I'm the program manager with the Maternal Child Health Team. So the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children program is a long-standing program that has been proven to support the health and well-being of moms and babies in Haldimand, Norfolk, and across the province. The presentation will start with an overview from Elena Walters, who's on my direct left. She is a public health nurse with the Maternal Child Health Team and has been with the health unit for 25 years. Following her presentation, Joanna, to my right, Joanna is a full-time mom with 5 children ranging in age from 2 to 11 years old, and she has participated on the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children program for 2.5 years.
Thanks, Kathy.
So our maternal and child health program consists of 6 components. The first is, just give you a brief overview, not in any particular order, injury prevention, which is creating safe environments for children. Our car seat donor program and concussion prevention program are examples. We have our prenatal program, which is online classes and in-person classes that we run in both communities. We have the Healthy Eating and Activity program. A registered dietitian can provide consults to Ontario Early Years Centres and childcare centres. Breastfeeding, and you've heard already about our Baby Friendly initiative that we're pursuing, our designation we're pursuing in 2018. But we also have public health nurses who can support mums over the phone at home or at our well baby drop-ins, and also breastfeeding buddies as part of this program. Parenting support, which again is in-home visits for breastfeeding, social media messaging, resource development. And lastly, the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children program, which is a provincial program to support vulnerable families at risk for challenges for development to help children achieve their full potential. And so this afternoon I'll be highlighting the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children component. So the program was introduced in 1999 across Ontario to support parents during the critical early years of a child's development. This program is completely voluntary. It's funded by the Ministry of Child and Youth Services Early Years Branch, and it's grounded in evidence to be both effective and efficient. This is the HPHC guidance document that outlines how we develop the services and the protocol for how we deliver the services in our community. So the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children program has several components. The first is universal screening. The goal is to have all pregnant women and postpartum women screened immediately after birth for risk factors that might impact child development in all domains, physical, cognitive, and social emotional. In front of you, we have provided a screening tool that shows the various factors that might impact child development. And all nurses in the health unit have been trained to use this screen in their contact with pregnant mums and postpartum mums to see if there's any risk factors in that family. We've also trained hospital nurses and midwives to use the screen as well. So you can see the various factors that might indicate where children are at greater risk for poor development and poor developmental outcomes. Women who identify as having 2 or more risk factors are deemed with risk. And with consent, they are called within 48 hours of coming home and offered a home visit to confirm risk and be offered the program. Families accepting the program receive blended home visits by public health nurses and family home visitors. Our family home visitors are trained peer support to provide the practical aspects of the program. And we specifically have 2 family home visitors on staff who are from the Low German-speaking Mennonite community, so they are able to offer more culturally sensitive care and translation services for us. When families consent to receive the program, needs and goals are mutually identified and set with the family. Trusting relationships are built with the public health nurses and family home visitors, and a plan is made to focus on those clearly defined goals. So this slide contains some of the goals that might be chosen with the family. It is not exhaustive. Each family's service plan is unique to them, and the blended visits provide support, information, education, and role modeling to move the family towards their goals. This program is time sensitive. We are expected to contact with-risk families and offer a home visit within 48 hours after coming home. And this house can be anywhere within the 2 counties. We do try to cluster our visits within a geographical area where possible so that we can see more families and also be good stewards of the program. The evidence for the program also shows that long-term involvement, which is an average of 18 months, has been demonstrated to provide the best child development outcomes. Again, each family situation is unique. The initial visits may be very intensive at first. With multiple visits, then as families find their strengths and stability, we don't have to visit as frequently. Many families have shorter involvement, and this balances with families who may be on the program with multiple children. So this is not an exhaustive list, but referrals or recommendations are made for the family to access additional targeted services according to their needs. The HBHC program is not a standalone service, and in this case, a PHN would act as a case coordinator for the family and facilitate communication with those outside agencies as necessary. These are our 2016 program statistics. These numbers can be found on page 2 of the HBHC program update provided. You can see how many children were born in families living in Haldeman, Norfolk, how many screens were completed, and how many home visits were made with the 89 families consenting to the service. So the HBHC program does impact many families in our community positively every year and has provided women with very meaningful experiences. We believe that if a mom is doing well, her children will probably be doing well. So that is our goal. And I have 2 such stories to share with you. They've been provided, again, as an addendum to your Board of Health report. I'm just going to read a few excerpts from their story. The first one is Teresa. It all started at the hospital after I gave birth to my first child. I was trying to breastfeed and was having difficulties. The nurse suggested that I sign up for a public health nurse to come over to my place and she could provide extra help. Having heard stories from my friends who had children and the struggles they faced when returning home, I decided to sign up. Carly came over and the help started there. I was given lots of information regarding breastfeeding and I learned a lot of breastfeeding techniques. Carly was super knowledgeable, informative, and professional. Carly had many resources set in place for myself because I was suffering with a little PPD. I was given a list of therapists, moms, group playdate centers, and lots of material to read. At first, the visits between Carly and myself were weekly, and as life got easier, we saw each other less and less. Carly and I scheduled our last visit and said our goodbyes. Less than 1.5 years later, I gave birth to twins. My mental health began to be an issue. Carly came out, and I think it was evident when she came over, she knew instantly there was an issue with my mental health. Carly suggested I sign up for a family home visitor as I needed someone to talk to on a more regular basis. I soon met Tina and my life changed. Tina saved my life. I cannot make that any more clear, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Tina gave me the tools and most importantly the mindset which I could not find myself to become the best mother I could be. She supported and encouraged me through my entire struggle with PPD. I can honestly say with my whole heart I felt 1,000,000 times better having Tina and Carly in my life. I had PPD and needed support. This program is amazing, and I'm sure it has not only helped me, but many other women out there who may not come forward so easily. I would like to say that I fully recovered, and the past is just a small part of my memory now. HBHC has an opportunity to make the lives of many moms much easier. And Camille's story, I was 32 years old and had just given birth to my third child, Zoe, who was born not quite a year after her sister Eve. Allison, a public health nurse, had come to my home before leaving and mentioned to me about the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children program and how she thought I could benefit from it. Eve, my second child, was an extremely colicky baby and a very difficult 1-year-old. Eve wasn't sleeping through the night when I brought Zoe home. I was exhausted. I was diagnosed with bipolar at 21, and during my back-to-back pregnancies, I had not taken any medication. I was definitely struggling at times. Allison set up a visit for Tina, a family home visitor, and herself to come out and meet us. This was the start of the most amazing program and support with an exceptional woman. The support was really like no other. I had no family giving any help or support, and I looked so forward to each and every visit with Tina, counting the days until the next one. Having another adult to help break up my day was a breath of fresh air. Tina never made me feel anything but good and was always willing to listen and lend a hand in any way possible. This program is an exceptional one. Just having someone on your side to help to guide you when you need it and listen when there's no one else is an amazing thing. My children benefited greatly from our relationship with Tina. I feel she was brought into our lives as a piece of a puzzle to help me get to where I am today, a stronger, more knowledgeable, and better mother. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, and certainly I appreciated those two stories being in the package when I read through them. Very, very well done. Questions? Report, Mr. Sonnenberg, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In this screening page you gave us, we expressed concern about use of tobacco, drugs, and alcohol during pregnancy. Then we go on to single out smoking of more than 100 cigarettes in her lifetime prior to pregnancy. Can smoking be that injurious to your health even though you become pregnant 20 years after you quit?
Through you, Mr. Chair. That's an excellent question. These are risk factors that have been demonstrated in evidence to signify that there could be potential risk for poor developmental outcomes with children. It's not so much that the actual, of course we know smoking is injurious to pregnant women, however that women who have previously been smokers combined with some other risk factors in the social or emotional realms may indicate that the children are at greater risk. So this is just a screen. It doesn't indicate that there's any potential risk there to a child. It doesn't mean that she's at risk during that pregnancy if she's smoked previously. It just is a snapshot that says there might be potential risk for that family.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Columbus, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We all know that it's important for our children and babies to get a good start in life. And with risk situation, the way you've got it worded, how do we stack up in Hullum and Norfolk compared to other jurisdictions in Ontario? Do we have more people in this situation, more mothers, or less, or do you have any numbers that you can share?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if Kathy is able to answer that question, how we don't compare between our communities and other communities, so we don't have any of those statistics available.
Would the statistics be around somewhere if you dug them up?
Through the chair. Thanks for that question. There are provincial statistics. What they don't tend to do is kind of want to compare region by region, but there are numbers where we could look at that. The ministry likes us to kind of create a program that fits to our community using the protocols and the guidance document that's provided by them, but there is some allowance around to what degree we provide service to families. And if we were trying to compare, we'd have to look at rural versus urban, and there hasn't been an in-depth study of that component, but there are stats that we could provide if you were.
So I guess you're saying that the criteria may not be the same for each region.
The screening is the same.
Okay.
The how service is provided. There's some guidelines, but how each health unit decides to provide service is dependent on the capacity and the kind of portfolio of staff that each health unit has.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Mr. Oliver, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Lana, for your report. My question is on page 8 of our agenda, or page 2 of the report, also the stats that you provided us. I guess I was surprised when the third bullet identifies that 658 families were identified as having some risk on the screening tool, and then we only were able to service a little more than 1 in 4 with an in-depth. Is that simply a person power issue, or were there other reasons why you really only were able to assess more carefully 1 out of 4 of those 658 families?
Through the chair, thank you. That's a very good question. I can answer part of that. When we get a screen on a family, there may not be any true risk. So we may consent to contact the family, and if they consent to a home visit, then we can go out, talk to the family, and find out, what's happening in your home, what's happening in your life, where could you use some support. And if there is no fit for our program, then we would probably discontinue at that point in time. The second thing is, because this is voluntary, we may have moms who identify with risk but say, I'm good, thanks, but no thanks, and we can't do it. That's their choice. So that's why that number is where it's at. I'm not sure if Kathy has any other things. Okay.
Further questions? Okay, thank you very much. Well done.
Thank you. And we also have Joanna as a member of our
Okay,
committee.
sorry. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Joanna Cousineau, and I would like to give you today a story about me. Then I'd like to give you a few moments to ask any questions that you may have, and then I would like to end with a poem called A Story About You. My story begins with Healthy Babies, Healthy Children at an election poll in the middle of nowhere, fairground, wherever that is, nearly 3 years ago. I was your average mom with a lot going on. 4 children, ranging age 8 down to 1, homeschooling one of the 4, and barely a moment to think. Sitting beside me on that rare day without children was Tina, a home worker with Healthy Babies, Healthy Children, who was working the poll with me. As we worked and got to know each other in the lulls, I shared with her that I was expecting our 5th child, at which point Tina told me I should call the health unit when baby arrived and access some of the assistance that was available to me. Well, her encouragement sounded great, but I sincerely doubted that I would call. I mean, I'm not a perfect mom, not a perfect person, but my husband and I pretty much had things together, and who in the world has time for help anyway? Fast forward just a few weeks, and my husband and I learned that our 5th baby would be born with a cleft lip and palate. Suddenly, any help, any sort of help, seemed necessary, and we knew that I would call. When Bo was born, we were faced with many challenges, even just to feed our little baby. I had exclusively nursed 4 babies, each past a year with great success. Now this tiny little bundle couldn't suck. There was no end in sight. How could I give this baby, now prone to ear infections because of his cleft, the best possible start and a fighting chance against these infections without nursing? Pumping would be a simply insane challenge, but a challenge that I would rise to. How could I then be confident that little Bo was actually getting enough nutrition, that he was gaining weight appropriately? What about keeping the McMaster Cleft team satisfied with follow-up without driving to Hamilton all the time? Enter public health nurse Bev and Tina. Tina and her team became for me my link to sanity. She earned my trust quickly, and even the trust of my husband, which does not come easily. Each time she arrived at my home, she met me wherever I was at, and I don't think she ever left before giving me the time that I needed to pump for my little baby in peace and without concern for my other children. On the days that Tina meets a semblance of peace in our home, we watch, discuss, and apply carefully selected parenting videos or applicable book portions. We kept tabs on Bo's weight to keep McMaster up to date and keep regular tabs on the growth and development and nutrition of our other young children. On days when my children have inspired question after question, I hold my sanity till Tina comes so that we can work on straightening my thoughts and devising strategies. On days when my ability to function is seriously hampered by the cacophony of the condition of my home, Tina just wades through the trenches alongside me and mentors me. Bo received the benefits of breast milk, and I received the support and sanity I needed to get through daily life, and Hamilton received the confidence of a thriving cleft cutie. Fast forward once again past Bo's first cleft surgery, still pumping, I might add. With a second surgery in sight, things began to slowly unravel. My hair was falling out, my weight sank to double digits. I struggled to eat without gagging or throwing up. I wanted to sleep and sleep. I woke every morning feeling at the peak of frustration, and I couldn't seem to enjoy any of the time with my children. Time to phone. Yes, Tina. Without a well-selected, real, gifted person, a person with real problems, challenges, history, and struggles, as a nurse or home visitor, I and my family might be in a different place today. Between Bev and Tina, it was their earned, respected encouragement, maybe headed a little towards instruction, towards myself and my husband that propelled my trip to my family doctor with my husband. Without them, my trip to my doctor might not have been as swift and may even not have happened. This was not normal. I was unaware of the contributing factors. And I want to make one thing very understood. I was a fifth-time mom with a great support system in place. Both my family and my husband's family have deep current and historic roots in the Haldeman Norfolk communities. We have a great support system in place. We're involved in the community. We're involved in our local church. My parents were group home parents, both here in Ontario and in Australia. My mom was one of 6. She was mom to 4 girls. She remains local, and we're close. I had 2 sisters, either with me or ahead of me in the child rearing process, but they had no idea. This was their understanding of normal for me, too. They didn't know that anything was amiss, nor did they know what to ask if they had even noticed. Understanding and recognition of my struggle came through the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children program and the real people whose feet and hearts become the life of this program. Diagnosed with postpartum anxiety, my adjustments and acceptance of a medication for anxiety would have been very slow without the assistance of the Haldeman Norfolk Health Unit, or even perhaps non-existent. Tina walked beside me through the process of mental illness, of treatment, and of recovery. In between all of this, Healthy Babies, Healthy Children has helped me navigate referrals to speech therapy and to REACH. I'm not sure that I can successfully put into words all of the ways that this program has contributed to the health of my home and even my own health. But perhaps more importantly, this program has left me encouraged and able to encourage others. Because of the influence of this program, I have helped someone close to me walk the road of mental illness, treatment, and recovery. I have been able to support other moms on their breastfeeding journeys. The arms of the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children are reaching well beyond their immediate sphere of influence into the community and beyond. So before I share the poem that I have for you, I'd like to ask if there are any questions.
No? Okay, continue. Thank you.
No? Okay, well, this poem is called A Story About You. Unfortunately, I did not write it. Who in their life hasn't planted a peach pit, just hoping that somehow a seedling would grow? And then they move on to some other adventure, and if it comes up, well, they don't even know. That's one way of picturing your style of living. You've planted ideas and dreams unaware. You've noticed somebody whose hearts need attention and planted a positive feeling in there. It's part of your nature. You may not remember that kind and encouraging thing that you've done, but everywhere, peach pits are growing like crazy, and people are blooming. I know it. I'm one.
Thank you very much. Very good. Anything else from board members? Very well done, ladies. Thank you very much. It's been moved by Wells and seconded by Oliver that staff report HS 17-25 Healthy Babies, Healthy Children Program update be received as information. Any discussion? If not, those in favor? Carried. Thank you. We'll go on now to our last staff report. On page 19, this is the Harm Reduction Program enhancement. Will be involving a budget amendment, and it's HSS 1728. Susan? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to the board. The purpose of this report is to request support from the Board of Health to accept funding being offered by the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care for harm reduction program enhancement. This money is specifically targeted to human resources to help us advance the work locally. We are proposing the addition of 1.5 full-time equivalents in the form of one public health nurse and one half-time program assistant. This funding is base funding, so it's not one-time funding. We know from the data that opioid-related sickness and death are an issue in our community. Between 2012 and 2016, we've seen more people coming into emergency departments, and sadly, more people are dying. In 2012, our community had the 22nd highest opioid-related rate of death in the 36 health units in Ontario. Today, we are second. Some of the reason behind that, we know that there's opportunity for us to be doing more work from a harm reduction perspective, more work from an education perspective, and looking at how we can work with our partners in first responders and other community services. Provincially and nationally, we recognize that there is urgency and there's substantial investment happening. The initiative we are presenting today includes 3 components. The first is creation of a local opioid overdose response plan. The second is distribution and training on how to use naloxone kits. And the third is the development of better surveillance systems that incorporate data from hospitals, first responders, and harm reduction services, and that will therefore enhance our ability to see what's happening and whether things are changing and with all hope, changing for the better. The work included in the scope of this initiative is only part of what's happening. There are concurrent provincial and LHIN level efforts that will look at establishing clinical guidelines for appropriate prescribing of opioids as part of an array of treatments for managing acute and chronic pain. They're looking at establishing clinical guidelines for addictions and rehabilitation treatment. And finally, looking at creating innovative solutions to improve access to mental health and addiction services. With that context, I'd be happy to answer any questions on the report.
Thank you very much, Susan. We'll start with Mr. Wells and then Black.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for your report. My question is pretty simple. We have $150,000 you're going to invest that in staff. How serious or how many people are we looking at hopefully helping with that $150,000?
Yeah. So in the 2016 statistics, what we saw is that there were about 10 people per 100,000 who die in this community every year as related to opioid deaths. There are many, many more who are suffering from the addictions and who are at risk. And so I think that there is the opportunity for us to reach far more than that, of course.
Based on your experience, is the situation getting worse or are we making progress?
From my understanding, the situation is getting worse, in part for a number of reasons. Part of that reason is the increase in some of the drugs that we've talked about here on previous occasions when we've talked about fentanyl, which up until a few years ago wasn't something we heard about. So we hear more of that. There are other aspects to it, though, like pain management, which for many years there have been prescribing practices for opioids that now we're learning more about and learning that we need to adjust those prescribing practices.
And my last question, Mr. Mayor, through you, if it would be permitted. I certainly understand that if people are taking drugs and we can do anything to help them, that's good. But in any way, are we enabling them to take and to continue the drug usage?
And to that, I would say through you, Mr. Chair, to the board that I guess when you look at, so who are these people that are taking drugs? And so it's not only people who are taking street drugs or recreationally or however you want to look at it. There are people who have been prescribed medication by their physician. So to say that we're enabling, I would say no. I would say that what we're doing is we're trying to create situations or circumstances and services that will support those individuals through their pain and helping them to manage their pain, and creating services that will help to address whether it be pain control for a physical pain or pain control for a mental health pain. So how do we support those individuals?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Black.
Mr. Chairman, through the staff, would this include safe injection sites?
At this point, through you, Mr. Chair, to the board, we've not had discussion of safe injection sites being part of our strategy.
So, okay. But if you do, I think the concern would be locations. And would that information, if you do have that discussion, would that come back to council?
Through you, Mr. Chair, through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that would come through the board.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Oliver?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is somewhat along the lines of Member Wells. Susan, after you said this, I scanned back through the report and could not find the actual data anywhere. You said we went from being 22nd across Ontario's health units in terms of deaths per population a few years ago to second in Ontario in terms of the number of deaths per population.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, that's correct. That data is actually was just pulled last week, and so there is a synopsis of it on page 53 of your report. But certainly, if you wanted the full picture from a provincial level, would be happy to share that.
No, that says enough for me, I think, right now. Thank you. My only other question, if I could, Mr. Chair, while I've got the floor, is regarding the naloxone kits in particular. As I read the report and the accompanying material, that seems to be a pretty big part of this new initiative that we'll be doing.
Yes.
And am I correct in remembering that naloxone is just a drug that is administered to someone who has suffered an overdose?
Yes.
It saves their life. It's going to save them from dying or from perhaps being seriously injured. And again, kind of similar to my colleague's question, making the naloxone available, is there any evidence whatsoever that contributes to the continued misuse of drugs, at least for those people that are drug users? I know we're saving their life, and that's a good thing. Is it in any way contributing them continuing with their drug abuse?
So through you, Mr. Chair, to the board, what I would say is that what naloxone does is it does buy the individual, if you will, the chance to live for another day, so that we can intervene with some of the counseling services that might be able to help them with that addiction. And that remembering that who are these people, and that some of them, it could be your father, mother, sister, brother, son, daughter, who just happens to encounter this through some of their other habits, if you will.
Thank you. And can we then, as the board, sort of be somewhat confident that if an individual, as a result of an overdose, is given an injection either by our EMS people or by the police or by whoever first responders are there, is there some follow-up with that individual? We've saved his or her life. Seems to me that gives us the right to try and almost intervene and help him or her with their problem. Is that something that we can be confident as a board that these folks will do somehow?
So the recommendation through you, Mr. Chair, is that if naloxone is given, that the individual still go to the emergency department. And the reason for that is that naloxone, it is a more powerful agent as far as binding to the receptors. So it does, if you will, it removes the opioids from the receptors, but they're still circulating in your blood. And so the naloxone wears off in about a half an hour. And so if you don't go and have that medical treatment, then what happens is that the opioids then reattach. So you do want the person to go to the emergency department, and then that would be the opportunity for at least that preliminary crisis intervention. Some of the concurrent initiatives that we're talking about will also be supporting some of the mental health and addiction services that go hand in glove with the harm reduction component.
Councillor Columbus.
Yes, Ms. Taylor, we know that how many people have passed away using fentanyl or these harmful drugs. Do we know how many people, do we keep a record of how many are saved? Like if this product that reverses things is available to anybody and everybody, how do we know when it's administered or who administers it? Is there a record kept somewhere?
And that's a very good question, through you, Mr. Chair, to the board. I think that will be part of what will happen with our naloxone distribution system, that we'll be looking at how do we start to track some of that, remembering that naloxone is only, we're just getting it from our health unit to be able to distribute it into the community. So we'll want to have some of that. What we do know, though, from the data that's available, is that rates per 100,000, that 53.5 people went to the emergency department as a result of an opioid-related incident, and so 10 of those 53 died, but then the other 43 and a half didn't. So we do know that there is some success there, so we'll want to continue to track that.
Anything further? I'll go through the resolution quickly. Moved by Columbus, seconded by Geisens, that we receive the staff report 1728 as information, that the Board of Health accept the funding of from the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care for the amount of $150,000, that the approved 2017 levy supported operating budget be amended, and further that the Board of Health authorize the mayor and the clerk to sign Appendix B for this additional funding. Further that the Board of Health approve the addition of 1.5 permanent FTEs to the Haldeman Norfolk Health Unit base staff complement effective October 1st of 2017, and that the Board of Health directs staff to allocate resources invested to date, and further that the Board of Health approve issuing a request for proposal to a maximum of $70,000 for completion of the legal agreements, policies, and inventory management processes that will be required to operate the naloxone distribution program. Any discussion on the resolution? Those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. One more item, Susan, we have a memo on page, I think it's 55. Yes, this is the quality and risk management. Do you wish to comment on this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the board, the purpose of this memo is to provide the Advisory Committee and the Board of Health with information about the health unit's investment in its staff to create capacity for quality improvement. The reason that this is important is that we do want to be able to leverage our full complement of staff to be continually working towards improving the safety of the services we're providing, the effectiveness and the efficiency, as well as the person-centeredness and equity. So these are certainly important skills to be developing. We recognize that the Haldeman Norfolk Health Unit is a very small unit by comparison. We have 82 full-time equivalent staff, which means we do have limited capacity and limited resources, so each and every person's contributions are essential. We also believe very strongly that by uniting our efforts and creating that environment to embrace quality improvement philosophies and methods, that we're able to really see the benefits of everybody's contributions. We've been working over this past 5 months to provide staff with a common language and to apply a proven methodology and a logical step-by-step approach that they'll use going forward. The results, the early results are certainly very compelling, and the improvements are noticeable. This will allow us to achieve our vision together of a healthy, vibrant, caring community for all, and to thrive in an environment of change and uncertainty. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Susan. Any questions to Susan? Councillor Oliver?
Mr. Chairman, Susan, I'm impressed with the success of this training program. Obviously, you've reported all of that to us. You note at the top of page 3 that it was $400 per person for this training, and we had some 80 or 90 staff that took part, so a $36,000 expense.
Right.
Was this within your existing training budget, or is this a new initiative that has taken away from some other training?
No, it was absolutely within our training budget through you, Mr. Chair. And the reason we did it in-house was it allowed us to deliver the same training to more people at a more cost-effective approach, and it also made it more manageable, because if we had had to send people off for the training, then that would also have meant more travel time and more expense, but also would have been more difficult to fit it into very busy schedules.
Anything further? Moved by Wells, seconded by Oliver. That's the staff memo. Update to Quality and Risk Subcommittee for the Healthy Public Health, creating a quality culture together, excuse me, be received as information. Discussion? Those in favor? It's carried. Thank you, Susan, for that memo.